I'm going to go ahead and get everybody admitted here. So we're going to have opening remarks again, and then we're going to spend a little time with Father Shantillo and the discussion about some diocesan efforts that they're spearheading, get some insight to behind the scenes and how that transpired, how it's going, kind of what's next. Then Joni Lewis is going to talk a little bit about some generational trends. And then we'll have a time at the end for some breakouts. So we'll divide everybody into some groups. We'll have some OSV representatives in each one. And we want to talk through any questions you may have about either presentation today. Feel free to turn those in to me or our team, or put questions in the chat that you have specifically as they come up. And we'll have a little bit of time at the end of Father's talk to answer some then, and then we'll save some of those for the breakout session also. So if you do have any questions during this, feel free to put those in the chat. We'll be monitoring that, and we can talk through that. So with no further delay here, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kyle Hamilton, CEO of Our Sunday Visitor. He's going to give us a little update on all the great things that OSV is doing and what we're looking forward to as being a partner.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for showing my 7th grade picture there too. I appreciate that.
Yep.
First year of middle school was pretty rough. So, well, welcome everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. Always thrilled to be able to talk to customers and potential business partners. And so many of you I know are already doing, allowing us to partner with you. So I don't want to go into too much of kind of the OSV story, but did want to kind of start at the top with kind of that, and you can see it on the screen, that the mission to champion the Catholic Church. I mean, hopefully that comes through in everyone on the team that you interact with, everything that we do for you, whether you're the diocese, a parish, Catholic school, or even an apostolate or national, Catholic publisher. So our values are to be innovative, resourceful, and caring. And we really try to live those values every day. One of the things that you'll see come through, hopefully loud and clear, both in our products and services and our customer care and kind of the effort to have successful customers, is that continuous improvement culture. We've been at that for actually about 20 years now. That kind of came to OSV back in 2003, believe it or not. So everything we do today, we try to do better than we did yesterday. It's a journey, definitely not a destination. So we're constantly looking for ways to innovate and improve and serve you more effectively, all with the ultimate goal of making your diocese, your ministry more effective to reach more people for Jesus Christ and share the gospel. So that's kind of why we do what we do for 111 years now, just even through the newspaper with Father Noel, who started OSV back with the first edition of the newspaper on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 1912. So I've been going at it for a little more than 110 years now and counting. I know you received a copy of the OSV Impact Report. I think that might be one of the first times we've actually tried to pull everything together that we do. We're often asked, who's your competitor? Who do you compete with? And it really varies because of the variety, as you'll see in that impact report. We were serving the church in so many different areas, from even sacrament prep and a basal series through OSV News, which I'll talk a little bit about, fundraising, consulting solutions, which may have brought you to this discussion today and tomorrow. Things as simple as offering envelopes for 2.5-3 million households, to online giving and church manager software solutions for the parish. So a lot of information in that impact report. So please, I'd encourage you, if you haven't looked that over, some of your names might actually even be in there as testimonials. And we always appreciate the opportunity to share those stories of success, hopefully for you as we serve you with others that might encourage them to do the same. So a lot going on in there. You will see a mixture too in some of the newer services and products and projects in some cases. So yeah, as Matt kind of flips through that, things towards the end, and you don't have to flip faster, Matt, but things like the OSV Podcast Network, OSV News, which I mentioned, OSV Talks, kind of a Catholic TED Talk, and just a wide variety. We kind of try to summarize in the aggregate that we're probably serving somewhere between 8 and 10 million people, and that might be that number might be, or that range might be a little outdated. It's probably well above 10 million people through everything we do for our customers. You know, serving 15,000 parishes, almost every diocese in the country with something. More and more Catholic schools, USCCB. We're doing a lot of support through national collections, and actually through their USCCB publishing operations. We're much more involved in those since they closed that at the conference. So I did want to point out one bit of kind of newer information, the Eucharistic Revival. OSB has a long heritage of philanthropic support for the church, going back to Father Knoll. That first edition, he came to Huntington, Indiana in 1910. First edition of that newspaper, the Our Synod Visitor newspaper, published, as I mentioned, May 5th, 1912. And then just a couple years later, he started giving money back to the Catholic Church in the United States, probably all the way to Rome as well, but especially in the United States. So early on, he was involved in, Catholic Extension Society, Catholic media to a very large extent. And we've carried on that kind of heritage, and it's kind of in our DNA to give back. So one of the recent grants that we've made is to the Eucharistic Revival. So we're giving $1 million to the Eucharistic Revival over 3 or 4 years. I can't remember the timeline exactly. We have a couple of our senior leaders on the executive committee of that. Jason Shanks and Scott Richard are both trying to help where they can with kind of in-kind leadership and support, and just being there to try to help that effort. So very involved in the Eucharistic Revival. Hopefully we'll see you at the Congress here next summer in Indianapolis, just in our backyard. So last thing I wanted to mention is the OSV News. When Catholic News Service, the Bishops' Conference announced Catholic News Service was closing. I think that announcement probably went public back in March, maybe, of last year. OSV, really through, I think, Providence, was given the opportunity to engage with the USCCB and that group, the group that managed that. And we were able effectively to launch OSV News, which was really to kind of step into the gap left by Catholic News Service. It was supposed to launch on New Year's Day this year. It actually launched on New Year's Eve, a little bit early. So several of the team members were posting and writing all night on New Year's Eve instead of celebrating, or maybe celebrating and writing and posting both. So OSV News currently serves 74 dioceses and about 27 other publishers. A few of those might be secular. Most of those are faith-based publishers. So a little more than 100 clients on a kind of a subscription model. So it is a wire service. If you haven't been to the site, I encourage you to go check that out too. This is the Our Send a Visitor site as well, which is kind of complements the OSV News. But OSV News, again, meant to be a wire service to support other publications, websites, social media for diocese. We hope in the future extending that into parish content resources. We think that's an important area that parishes really need, more of a content library and an easy to use resource as they populate their websites and communicate with their parishioners, trying to help them engage in the parish community. So with that, I don't want to take too much time. I'd be glad to answer any questions if there are any. I don't know if that's allowed, Matt, but
Yep, always allowed.
yeah.
So, yeah, if you have questions as we're going through things, feel free to, again, put those in the chat. We can get those to Kyle, or if you'd like to have a conversation about something specific, Kyle and our team are always willing to help with those questions. So Kyle's a great introduction to OSV, and that's why, as Kyle mentioned, this hangs on our wall outside of our employee break area, just to remind everybody of really why we are here, and that is to serve, to be caring, to be resourceful, to be a service-based organization to help with the mission. So thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Have a great discussion, great meeting.
Thank you.
Take care.
So with that being said, I will switch gears and we will begin our talk with Father Shantillo with the Diocese of Scranton. I'm going to highlight him to make sure everybody can see his face. So Father Shantillo is an interesting background, and I'll let him talk through that. But here's kind of his journey to finding faith and wanting to be more. I got on the internet Wayback Machine and found a nice little article from his university on his decision. And again, that's like Kyle mentioned, the photo from the grade school yearbook there, the young father there, but really talking about his desire for more and moving on. So Father, with that, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll begin our conversation.
Well, thank you, Matt. I'm certainly glad to be here today to speak with all of you, and looking forward to trying to maybe answer some of your questions. If you're expecting all the answers, you're at the wrong place probably. But I think for me, I'm here today speaking because, and I'll go over this in my bio, is when I became a pastor, I encountered a difficult situation. I think I saw Rich Fisher on this call, and he came into my parish, and he really helped me with an increased offertory program, not once, but twice in 5 years. It was very beneficial to our parish and eventually now to our diocese. But as Matt was saying, I was an MBA before I was a priest. I was a CFO and a CEO of healthcare organizations. Loved what I did. Loved working with people, loved administration, but God kept calling priest. And as we all know, God usually wins out. Some of us, it takes longer than others to answer. But I've been a priest since 2009, and just so grateful for the experience I had beforehand, but really just blessed to be a priest. I love the ministry. I love being in parishes. I was an assistant pastor for 5 years in one of our largest parishes, and then I went to St. Matthew's for 5 years, and after that, for the last 3 years, I've been involved as the Episcopal Vicar for Clergy for a year, and then the Vicar General and moderator of the Curia for the last 2 years. And so I kind of speak to you today out of those experiences. And especially, I think I'll go right into, and Matt, you jump in whenever you want, but I'm going to go right into what kind of I encountered at St. Matthew's, how OSV helped me, and then how they're helping our diocese. And I think I'll never forget when I got to St. Matthew's. It's a wonderful parish. The pastor had been there for 29 years, retired. You know, it got to the point where the facilities were aging, all the teams were aging, the staff was aging, and When I got there, I'll never forget meeting the part-time business manager. She was riding around with all the checks in her car. And she said, Father, I can't mail these checks because we don't have any money. And so I think the parish lost a $500,000 to 3 years before I got there, those 3 years, and never had published a financial statement in the bulletin for 29 years. And so as I walked into that and started being transparent with some financial trends, and we did a little Thanksgiving appeal, it became apparent that we really needed to do something about our offertory. And that's when I called our Sunday visitor in. I'll never forget them coming down and meeting with our parish council and our pastor council about kind of helping us. And, you know, our councils were very much against the idea at first. And when our Sunday visitor left, they looked at the price and they said, we just can't do this, Father. I said, well, that's okay. They wanted the staff to do it ourselves. I said, well, I have 2 part-time employees and a busy parish. And would you guys all like to come 4 nights a week for the next 6 weeks and write the letters, mail them, talk to our parishioners? And they all said, no, Father, go ahead and use our Sunday visitor. and so we did, but there was a great deal of skepticism when we did it. And when we did this first time at St. Matthew's, I think we were somewhere between $150,000 to $175,000 of new pledged support. And people gave to this campaign because they love their parish, they love what we were doing, and we'd never asked before. And it wasn't a hard ask. It was telling about our mission, telling about our stories. And you know, they pledged $150,000, $175,000, and we probably got 70% of that the first time. We did it again in 2 more years, and we got about the same amount again. And so what that did for my parish, when I was there at the time, was really help us do all kinds of ministries. We just done a lot of project renovations, and our Sunday visitor made it real easy because I didn't have the staff to write the letters, to track it, to manage it. And they did all that, including coaching me and the people give the witness talks. And what I liked about it was our parishioners talking to our parishioners about why they love their church. It wasn't a hard ask, it was an easy ask. Now, this slide that Matt just put up, the new pastor, he was actually the vocation director that brought me into the seminary. So it was interesting how we flipped here, but he just did it again at St. Matthew's. And the finance council again gave him a hard time. Why do you need to do this again? And it was the pastoral council that said to him, you know, Father, you really need to do this. And he did it. And it's kind of ironic. What was the pledge? About another $150,000 a year. And he wants to spend that and do some more ministry in the parish. But I wanted to share those stories with you because as I was the pastor of St. Matthew's, I was also on the Diocesan Finance Committee. And I would keep saying to the Diocesan Finance Committees, why aren't we doing increased offertories in our parishes? I mean, it really has helped me as a pastor deal with a lot of serious issues and really be able to focus more on the mission. And then lo and behold, now I'm in the diocesan as moderator of the Courier, as the Vicar General, and we have a great diocesan team, lots of people that worked hard on the initiative to do increased offertory as a diocese this year. And we did it for the first time. I'm going to talk a little bit about that next.
Yep. Quick question, Father. The demographics of St. Matthew's, could you give us a little insight to kind of what the trends were from population or age or anything like that?
You know, we were the Poconos area of Pennsylvania, where St. Matthew's is probably one of our most diverse regions in our diocese. A lot of people coming from New York and New Jersey into the Poconos and resettling. We had quite a large Hispanic community. We probably saw, as I left, we probably saw about 1,500, 1,700 people a weekend, and about 400 from our Hispanic community. We had all ages, all incomes. We had 2,400 households that made up our parish.
Okay.
And we had we were right by a state university, East Stroudsburg University, and a mile away from our Catholic high school and Catholic grade school. So we had a lot of families in the area, which was nice.
Okay. Great, thanks. That was one of the questions that came up. I appreciate you answering that.
Great.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit then about, now you're in the diocese. We've got, you've got the ability to influence some things a little different, but you're also seeing some trends, right?
Yeah.
That you wanted to make a little more visible.
Yeah, I think we when I came to the diocese, we had, you see Vision 2030 up here. It's the vision for where we need to be in the year 2030, but it replaced Vision 2020. And Vision 2020 was a good plan, but what it really focused on was just the priest. Everybody was worried about we're retiring and there's not enough of us and there's not enough new vocations. And so pastoral planning was being primarily done through that vision. And what we realized is for our Vision 2030, we needed to look at not just priests, but really three other priority drivers: parish vibrancy, financial performance, and facilities. And our diocese has gone through what we call a call to holiness about 15 years ago, where we went from 230 parishes to 117 parishes really quickly. And now, as we look at Vision 2030, there still needs to be some right sizing in our diocese, but we're doing it slow and gradual, and we're doing it based on these priority drivers. So these priority drivers, one or more, is impacting a parish, then our parish office for parish life and our executive council of the diocese, we work with those parishes to see where the future is and how we can work together. So we're not looking at a comprehensive whole redoing the diocese at once. We're looking at each region at a time based on priority drivers. We found that financial performance was a problem, that 19 parishes of ours were basically financially bankrupt, and that we really weren't, just like the parish I walked into, a lot of our parishes weren't putting out financial trends and financial stats in their bulletins. So we put in a policy where every parish, and they got the reports from the finance office, from the reports they sent to us. We published the first weekend or second weekend in January for the first time ever in all of our parishes, 5-year financial trends, all the same report, followed up a month later with parish statistics of baptisms and everything about your parish, confirmations, people attending mass from the October mass counts, so that all of our people in our parishes that want to read them, we could all kind of be on the same page as we talked about some challenges. And one of the challenges that came through loud and clear was finance. And if Matt puts up on the slide that financial slide of the diocese, we'd never looked at this before. Maybe you do in your diocese, but we look at a lot of things, but we never talked about what is the offertory of all of our parishes together and where is it gone? We look at our diocesan financial reports, we look at our consolidated school reports, but we hadn't looked at one for the parishes. And what we found is, from I think 2013, let me just grab my page here. If 2013 to 2021, we lost $6.7 million in offertory, or about 14.4%. And what I tell people is that's not the true loss, because you all know, and you're dealing with it now if you're doing your budgets, that inflation's at least a couple percentage points. So what really happened to our parishes and our diocese is we lost about a third of our capital, our purchasing power, to inflation and to decreased offertory. And so what happened? Well, what happened is in a lot of our parishes, they just kept cutting expenses, and you keep cutting and cutting. And then you come to find out nobody has any lay youth ministers because they can't afford them. And so it really becomes a slow death in terms of the mission because you can't afford anything. And I think that's what happened at the parish that I walked into. And so when we looked at this information, we talked to the bishop, talked to wanting to do a diocesan increase offertory program for everybody. And I think it's always a challenge with us priests because we're all at different places, and the bishop doesn't want to mandate it. So what our bishop did is he said, after COVID, a lot of the pastors, when I'm out, are complaining about their offertory, about things being too expensive. So why don't we do the increased offertory? I'll make it highly recommended. I'll ask all our pastors to do it this year. We'll go with our Sunday visitor. And what we decided to do as an incentive, because there were some skeptics, right? we said that we would keep you whole. So if it cost you $10,000 in fees from OSV when you do this, if you get more than $10,000, you pay it. If you get less than 10,000, we'll pay the difference. And so what happened was 54 of our parishes did it, and they did very well. 63 didn't do it, and we were okay with that the first year because some had some really good reasons. Some had consolidation that just happened. Some had just done a large capital increase, a capital campaign. So when we look at the 54 that did do it, and they did it this January through April, they brought in an additional $2.9 million, or a 35% increase. And I think a couple things that were really interesting is the pastor said to me, just like I found, very easy to do it. They found that it wasn't a hard ask, that they got up, and I watched some of, now with Zoom, you can watch all these homilies all over your diocese. So I watched some of the witness talks, and they were fantastic to see people get up and say they give to their church because of the mission that we do, the number of poor people we feed, or the number of kids we baptize. It truly was inspirational to see. So they had great success, and I think a lot of our priests were shocked that actually people would support them.
Yep.
And they all felt, I don't know what it is with us priests sometimes, but we all felt guilty asking. And people want to give and they want to help, but we have to give them a reason to give. And so for us, we found that it went very well. I mean, I think some of our pastors will say to me, yeah, but we had to pay money to get it. I said, well, if you didn't pay the money, you would have never got it. So, I look back at, my experience at St. Matthew's, the collections there is up several $100,000 over 8 years. But we had to invest to do it. And the thing that I always say from the diocesan level is, think of how much money we put into paying for our diocesan annual appeal. And then tell me how much money as a diocese we spend on helping our parishes with our offertory. We kind of just expect people to give, and we don't really look at it very closely. And I think it becomes, even if people say they're going to pledge, there's a work that needs to be done following up and creating this culture of stewardship in the parish and this culture of follow-up. So there's some of the things that we found. I think we were quite successful our first year. Our biggest challenge going forward, and we're working with our Sunday visitor on this, is we want to do a renewal. We don't want this to be a once and done for the 54. And we really want to encourage the 63 that didn't do it to do it. And a lot of them are talking about it because, all the priests talk. And they're all wondering how this one had $100,000 more in pledges. And so I think we're going to have many more people do it this coming year. And we're actually even talking about, does the diocese need a full-time position to coordinate this with OSV? So we're talking about some more specific partnering with them, is how do we manage this process going forward so that chart that Matt put up, that it keeps going up every year for at least inflation, that it doesn't keep this downward run that was happening. So I think we really think it's important to do some resources and some commitment if we're going to work on this. We can't just assume it's going to happen by itself anymore.
No, that's a good point, Father. I think, looking back when I first, since I'm a data nerd, and we kind of looked at parish trends, and we looked back over a 3-year and a 7-year period to kind of see what the landscape was. And kind of the trend was, overwhelmingly, like you mentioned, some parishes were doing okay. They were above their trend lines.
Yep.
But several of them were continuing to trend below all of their previous trend lines, which, their last fiscal year was showing that they were still hurting. And we knew that was going to cause some pain for priests that, to be honest, they don't go to seminary to be fundraisers.
No.
And being able to help them change their mindset from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance takes some time. Because they are constantly worried about, what if, what's in the budget? What expenses are coming at us now? What's the next, big capital need that's going to drop on us? So, HVAC or roof or windows or, buildings that just have been neglected, to your point, sometimes for years. And what's the plan to start getting there? You can't fix it all at once.
No.
We had those conversations with priests that said, oh, I can do this year and then take a break. It really isn't, because the invitation to the story is what really changes the momentum. And you saw that as you did that, a second time, and as these become part of the fabric, you're helping your priest be a storyteller. And when you talked about those lay witnesses that you're able to watch, that's really what's attracting people back to our masses, that they're hearing that their Catholic Church really wants to change the future of that local community in some way, but it is only limited by the response from those that are listening.
Matt, one of the things our communication director is big on is that we put a lot of this in our Catholic newspaper that we were doing this, but he's looking for pastors, and we've been calling them. So you've done this increase offertory, you might have to do one next year. Okay, Father, your parish got $100,000 in new commitments. What are you going to say next year when you get up and talk to your people about an increased giving campaign of what you've done with that money? And unfortunately, some of us will just say, well, we paid the bills. Well, okay, but some of them are saying, well, I'm going to hire that youth ministry, or I'm going to put money in this food bank, or I'm going to repair this. And I think, people want to give to a story. They want to see that their money is being utilized. It doesn't just get all in a black hole of what we call the budget. So I think having that story is in thinking that way, changing the mindset is a big part of this if we're going to continue it into the future.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's the biggest thing. Again, coming out of 2020, 2021, a lot of parishes kind of put blinders on, like, I just got to get through this. I just got to get through this. I just got to get through this. And they forgot how to dream. How to get into a thriving mindset again is going to take some time to open those hearts again from our leadership. They're kind of shell shocked still, I think. They don't realize what's possible. And to your point, I'm in a third year with another program that, after we wrapped up the third year, Father said, when I took the story to my community, I usually said, hey, with some of these one-time gifts, we're going to try to focus on a particular ministry or a project that's going to help us, grow again. And this year, he said, when I went to say that, I wasn't quite sure what to say, because I really don't have anything. Because of the last 3 years, we've become a more generous just because community, not waiting for another fundraising ask or an invitation. And when he said, folks, I'm not sure what our next project is, I need your help with that, they all clapped and said, congrats, we've got to that point now where we're getting out and we're able to dream again about, okay, how do we reach deeper into our community? So that's exciting to see that after several years, our priests can kind of have that impact on their community. And he was surprised that they were all clapping and celebrating that. So we look forward to that, those
Great.
stories coming out of the communications group there. Let's go through kind of, so you've laid a good groundwork. We talked a little bit about where we were coming from, kind of what was next. We looked at where we are today. Obviously, we've got several priests now. You mentioned sometimes brotherly competition, I think is interesting to see how that dynamic works. Some priests that said, man, I'm not really sure about this, because we had a finance council chair maybe, or even a staff member kind of leery about the invitation going out. Have you seen any stories or talked to any priests that are like, okay, I did it once, I feel better now, I'm over my fear? That fear of change is a real thing that scares a lot of folks. They're waiting for that one person to come forward and challenge them on why they did this. How can you ask for money, kind of a thing. Any narratives there that you could talk to us about?
Yeah, I think most of our pastors would say it was very easy, and they can't believe how easy it was and how generous people would be. I think that would be 95% of them. Where they get concerned and where we have our work to do is they're not always seeing the benefit of the renewal because they're afraid to ask for a second time. And that's where we say that, well, you're not really asking a second time, you're telling your story, you're telling them what you've done with it, and you're encouraging people to have a culture of generosity. And everybody else in the world that's asking nonprofits are doing this every year, asking for something, and you're not. So I think we do have people feeling. The other thing I think people realize, they're starting to realize is, okay, they're over that hurdle that they could see it was easy, and I might get them to say they want to do it again. But I think one of the things that's hard is, like, so they were committed to get $100,000 more. Well, some people are going to remember that and some aren't. And, in another nonprofit setting, you probably would set up a reminder, a letter or email, thank you for your pledge, but you haven't made it. And our priests are just kind of wrapping their minds around, well, we can coast and do it again, or we can really start, even in between, working it with follow-up letters and reminding people. But that takes a little more work. It takes a little more analysis, a little more commitment on our part to really manage the offertory. And I think that's where our priests, with all their other responsibilities, need to grow. And I think we need to get staff and lay people involved in that to help them do that. So it's not something that's one more thing they're taking.
Okay, great. And to that point, this is kind of the let me get my screen sharing back up here. So having that calendar, that plan, or that framework for your parishes, and I love to do this when we're talking in our workshops that we do. What is your plan to tell your story more than just this one time of year? Wherever your diocesan appeal may land, there are things that they can continue to reach into for time and talent and resources and prayer life, that we can kind of create this personal impact, parish impact update sequencing that is going to be critical to moving our communities forward, because we know that the more often we tell the story, the more often people are coming forward to serve. And you're right, that's a different skill set that many parishes may not have, to put this together on how do I do this thing, and how easy can it be, whether I do it in my parish office or I reach out to a partner, either it's the diocese, a local printer, OSV. Obviously, we can handle that storytelling to keep everybody on track, because we all know that we're in a short attention span society today. And what they hear in March may not still resonate in July or August or September, unless we bring them back to those moments of the lay witness. And I think the rhythm of our priests saying, thank you for what you've given. Because of you, here's how we're serving and how we're impacting lives, and letting them know what's next. That next step could be the invitation. Again, it's always an invitation. And I think that's the one vocabulary word I always try to get our priests and leaders to take out. We don't want to ask anybody for anything. We want to invite our community to the next version of our Catholic Church. And I think that kind of what's next step helps our short attention span kind of overburdened parishioners see that, oh yeah, I can continue to impact this of my church. And here's how I'll do it, because Father invited me to take one more step in my, my stewardship pathway.
Yeah, our next conversation with our Sunday visitor is going to have our team of courier staff here meet with some representatives and look at this for our diocese and how we could do this. We're trying to integrate this into our pastoral planning more. So like when the CFO goes out and talks about financial problems, how was your increased offertory? How are you doing on stewardship? When people talk about wanting to do youth ministry, but the funds aren't available, well, is this something you could talk about when you do your increased offertory? What are you doing to, instead of just saying, no, we can't afford it, is it really something that's critical to the mission? And if it is it something we should look at a little differently? So just trying to develop that culture of, like Matt said earlier, to dream what's possible. Well, what do we need? And then how do we get what we need?
Great. Couple questions here I think we can answer. We've got looks like 5 or 10 minutes here. Yeah, so there was one question about wanting the diocese to cover up front rather than guarantee after. Were there any discussions about the way that mechanism worked that kind of led one way or the other behind the scenes there at the diocese?
Yeah, there were. We had talked about at one point in time, maybe paying a quarter of the cost or 50% of the cost right up front. But then we looked at the financial health of the diocese and we said, the upside for the parishes, we thought were so great here that if we kept them whole, maybe that was enough. And so we talked to some of our pastors about that. And they all said, well, you know what, if I can do this and it's risk-free, and I think with our Sunday visitor, the pastors didn't have to pay for a couple months out until this program started going and the money started flowing in. The most of them thought that was an acceptable way to go forward. And just for budgetary issues, we thought that was the best way for our diocese. And the other thing is we wanted the pastors to do it. I mean, we didn't want them to do it just because we told them to do it. Because if they got up there, if we covered it all, everybody might have done it, but then they might not have been enthused about the witness talk. And so we're just spending money to have a priest stand up and say, well, the diocese is making we do this. And we didn't want that to happen. So we kind of we thought if we paid too much, it might lessen their incentive to really embrace the product.
Yep, no, I get that. And to be honest, there probably were some that still said that, whether it was in their staff meetings, I'm doing this because Bishop told me I had to do it, kind of a thing. Those are always interesting to watch, when they're doing their homily and they're introducing the program, how they approach it. And that does impact the success of these programs widely. We see that, and you probably hear those stories about Father doing a bang up job or not such a great job, or forgetting to ask people the simple thing. We ran into this a few times where they're like, they didn't mention fill out the commitment card, like right away. They kind of let people off the hook for a week or so. And that really does make a big impact on those small things. And that's why we try to help coach. Our implementation team helps them understand how important some of these small things are to be there. So thanks for looking into that and letting us know a little about that, because that is a big question. A lot of dioceses, it's tough to fund it up front, but we can show obviously with data that just in one-time gifts and increases that parishes see in the first 4 to 6 weeks, almost the entire program fee is covered in those increases, and then it's a net increase for the rest of the year as we redeem those new commitments over time. So thanks for that. Thanks for looking into that. I think it's worked out really well too, by the way. That was a good strategy to take that in. So I'm looking for any other questions here. All right. Yep. Nothing in this chat yet. You talked a little bit about that position. Obviously, you've got a director in development position at the diocese. That's obviously critical to the future. And I know you talked a little bit about what the future holds for almost like a parish vitality position, where there's somebody actively engaging all of your parishes and then being maybe a liaison between us as a partner there. And that's fairly new.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Yeah, we know we put in the budget for a position just so we'd have it, and we're still working with our Sunday visitor and our Office of Parish Life and our development team in terms of what's the best way to do it. Can one person really deal with 118 parishes? Could one person be the facilitator of a couple teams from people from our development office and our Office of Parish Life to train people on this? So we know we need more attention. We know we need more follow-up. And it's kind of a work in process. It's great having our Sunday visitor come and present this, and they do a great job. And they came to 4 regional meetings when we kicked this off. But it would be nice if somebody that was recognized here in the diocese, their face was on this as well too. So, and that's what we're really trying to figure out the best way forward. Some of our pastors have said maybe the renewal we could do ourselves for less money, create our own forms and do it. And we said, and Matt and I have talked about this, we're not against that as a diocese. We find, though, that when I talk to a lot of the priests talk to me, they just don't have the staff to do that. So I don't think one size fits all. So maybe the other role of this person we would hire is to help help parishes find the size that fits them, so that we're doing something every year, that we're not giving up on this.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is critical, Father. That's a good point that, once we train, and that's part of our hope, is that we're encouraging and we're coaching both the leadership at the parish and the priests on what's a good process look like, and can we do this with the right tools. And
Yeah.
if we have that tool set today, or that, that key volunteer, is that person going to be here, and will they stay around, or will I lose that person? This is frustrating here. Hang tight. And when that happens, do I have a backup plan? And I think that's the biggest struggle, is maybe this year we have that skill set, maybe next year we don't. And I think this is a good visual. I saw this the other day, and I think everybody in our priests and our leadership teams could really look at, what we pour into can be what's growing the most, and how do we manage through those conversations with our staff, like, oh, I think we can do this. And then they do it for the year, and they're like, I don't want to do it anymore. Bring OSV back in, or bring in, trying something different. So we're willing to walk with those parishes in those journeys. We know sometimes they have to do things a different way to see the benefit of how other things went.
And I
So,
think it's also just not getting disappointed. Like, we had 54 parishes do it. I would have liked to seen the 63 other ones do it, but next year is another year, and then they know, they're talking about it. They know we're going to talk to them about it again. And even like we talked about hiring this position, we don't have the perfect plan. We're not perfectionists, and it's going to evolve over a couple years. And I think that's okay, because if we wait till we have the perfect answer and the perfect solution, we'll never start the process, and we wouldn't have these extra funds that our parishes seem to need so much to help them do ministry.
that's funny you mentioned that, because the other graphic I have here, I should show you all. Let me pull this up on my screen. That's the other graphic that I kind of wanted to share with the team here, that, being perfect doesn't sometimes get you anywhere. Obviously doing nothing gets you 100% of that nothing. But the key to progress is having forward as your key pace, whether that forward is crawling or that forward is running at full speed. Never letting the fear hold you back. So that's pertinent. Okay. Well, Father, I think that's great. I don't see any more questions. I believe we've been able to hit everything. Again, as we go through today, if more questions do come up, feel free to drop them in the chat, or hold tight. At the end of Joni Lewis's talk, we will do some breakout rooms. There'll be an OSV representative in there, and go from there. So as we close up, Father, anything else that we may have missed that you wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I mean,
I think we hit it all. Yeah.
I think we talked about it all. I think if it's something you're really interested in, and you're having a problem in your diocese, I think it's worth talking to some people, looking at the products, and just it might be able to help you. It might be an easy way to get you started.
Yep. And to your point, if 5 or 10 parishes wouldn't have tried this program previously, it may not have gotten to the point where you could talk to all the other priests and said, hey, we've all done, this part of this group has done this. What do you think about it? It does take those first 5 or 6 to kind of get the groundwork laid, so everybody gets comfortable with it. And we couldn't do that if it wasn't for the work of Rich and Joni and the team that had been in the diocese previously, running those little programs from time to time, to get the awareness built up. Father, if folks want to reach out to you afterwards in the follow-up weeks, would you be okay if they ask us for your info, we could share that with them a little bit?
Sure,
Okay.
You can share that. That's no problem. And
Okay.
I can also connect you to other people on our team. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll make sure. So if you do have questions, want to look into anything particular, let me know, or let any of the OSV, your contacts there know that you'd like to have a little more conversation. And oh, here we go. We did have one question here that I'll talk about here as we wrap up and get ready to transition to Joni. So there is obviously the biggest thing is that as a group, I think pastors worry that we ask for money too much. And again, I think that's part of the mindset shift that we're working on here that does take time to get them over that. I don't want to be, I had this one deacon tell me, everybody knew when I stood up in front of church, I was dollar bill deacon. I was going to talk about money.
Yep.
And that's the mentality that we have to change. We have to disconnect stewardship and fundraising. They're not the same and they're not replacements for each other. Fundraising has its point in time and needs to be fun, FUN. When our fundraising efforts are a budgetary line item, that's when we start getting into some trouble because we haven't cultivated a true sense of stewardship within our people through the invitation. And when we do this in a poor timing, sometimes we'll do like a priest will say, let's do this 2 weeks before the bishop's appeal, and then I'll do the bishop's appeal, and then there's a Christmas ask. And then people do feel fatigued. It's a term that we recognize in fundraising called donor fatigue. So when they feel like they're asking, they just need a little help and a little coaching to change their language into more invitational. And how the story goes, again, because you gave, thank you, here's what we've done, here's what's next. When we can start getting that mantra kind of in their style of communication, I think we start changing the game. And you probably saw that at St. Matthew's a little bit when you got in there and started changing the way people looked at that. Would that be fair to say, Father?
Yeah, I think it would be. It's funny you mentioned the fundraising. Our diocese is known all over, I think, in this part of Pennsylvania, having big parish festivals. They make lots of money, but I think we did that and we didn't encourage people to really tithe or really support in other ways. And that's hurt us. Yep. Long term. I think what really helped our guys understand that is when we had regional meetings. We had 4 regional meetings when Matt and Joni came out and spoke, and they spoke about that whole invitation model, how this was going to look. And they also put a lot of key statistics. Joni might do that next. I don't want to steal her thunder about how philanthropic the world is today, and how much money is going to nonprofits and how little the church is going. That comes right back to us not inviting. And we've all been to that parish, maybe growing up, where the priest got up every week and asked for money. That's not ever a good thing. And so we're not asking priests to do that. We're just inviting them at strategically placed times in the year so that they can help support the ministry. And it's really different. This won't work if you just get up there and ask. It's got to be an invitation. It's got to be showcasing what the ministry of the parish is.
Yep. Thank you. And I do think that's important. I think learning the rhythm of the year makes a big difference in how you space out. So being intentional, kind of, you mentioned your pastoral plan, looking out 12 to 18 months, and how can we weave in the stories every month, either in the bulletin or on our websites or in our social media. I think that's critical. So yeah, great. No, good comments in the chat. Keep them coming. We appreciate everybody. You can have your own conversations there. So I'm going to take a breather here. Father, thank you again. We're going to transition to Joni Lewis and her discussion. So let me go ahead and switch gears. Everybody can take a breather and take a drink and be ready here. I'm trying to double check. Nothing there.
Hey, while Matt's doing that, on your reactions, let's give Father a virtual round of applause because that was awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your insights, Father. If everybody goes down to the reactions, we can give them a nice hand clap there.